Hello again, everyone. This is Alex Toth, part 13. And if you're new to my channel, if you can subscribe, if you like the video, if you can like it, if you just spread the word, I want to grow my channel. And again, this is my attempt to try to remind people or to let people know about the great Alex Toth. So here we go. This is Alex Toth again. This is Alex Toth part 13. And just as way of introduction, if you're new to this, this is what I'm doing is I started my first video for Alex Toth was just to show a general view of his art. I went through a number of books, but just in a very like a simple way, just showing some pages here and there. But then I said, let me get a little deeper. Let me go back to his interviews. Let me go back to these commemorations after he died, these retrospectives, and to get to know the mind of the man behind the art. And so far, if you saw them all, I think you have a good idea of where he stood in this field that he loved. And I'll continue from here. So here we go. He was a true genius in his field, says artist Sparky Moore, as he relates his own close encounters with Toth. Interview conducted by Jim Amash, transcribed by Brian K. Morse. Sparky Moore drew tons of comics pages for Dell, Gold Key, and Disney. He also drew model sheets and layouts for many Hanna-Barbera, Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, etc., and Grant Tree, Lawrence, Captain America, Spider-Man cartoons. Sparky Moore says, I first met Alex the first time he showed his work at Western Publishing, also known as Whitman, in Beverly Hills around 1954. I was there the day Alex walked in with his samples. Don McLaughlin was there, Chase Craig, myself, and maybe one or two other people. Everybody was totally impressed. He was taken on immediately and went on to bigger and better things. Jim Amash asks, do you remember what was in his portfolio? Moore says, only that it was comic book work, pencils and inks. His style was extremely unique. Just one thing about that, right? His style was extremely unique. I was watching something and I was reminded of, art, right? And truth. Truth is very simple. It's not complex. I think, what's his name? I forgot. He's a sportscaster. Wiley. Something Wiley. I should know his name. I don't apologize. There was a friend of mine who also referred to, like, truth is singular. Lies are plural. And truth is simple. Lies are complex. Lies are confusing. Truth is direct. Lies are messy. And that's Toth's art, really. I mean, cut to the bone, cut through a lot of crap, and got to the truth. So it says here, only that it was comic book work, pencil and inks. His style was extremely unique. He was much further along artistically than most of us. When he says that, much further along, I think this guy at least understands that, there's a certain point as an artist where you cut through a lot of the bullshit. Your own bullshit that you've attached to your art over the years. You try to match the best, considered quote-unquote the best, fan favorites who put a lot of lines in their art. They bury their art in a lot of ways. They really do. To bury their flaws, to bury their insecurities. They're very insecure, a lot of artists, unfortunately. And the most confident ones just want to stand naked. They're proud to stand naked. They don't put on coats and jackets and sunglasses and hats and earrings and tattoos and, scarves. And they don't do that in their art. They stand naked. They stand proudly. And there's something about that. And, as I discuss Toth, and I'm even learning more about Toth himself and learning more about art. And that's why, an all-time great, Dave Mazzucchelli, who is legitimately, an all-time great on the scale of Kirby and Ditko and Toth and Romita. And there's no doubt about it. He is an all-time great. And he's been teaching comic book art for, I guess, decades now at the Rhode Island School of Design, at the School of Visual Arts. And he cannot help but become better. Why? Because you become a little more conscious of what you're teaching the students. And you start becoming a little conscious about art and why you think of this and that and so on. And you could bring that to your stories then. And so there's something about that. That's a big interjection. This is what I do. I get these thoughts and I have to express them before I forget them. And that was one of Toth's columns was before I forget, ... It's pretty funny. Anyway, his style was extremely unique, and he was much further along artistically than most of us. He wore a jacket, coat, and regular shirt. I don't remember that he was overly dressed, because most of us wore Levi's and regular shirt. The art directors all wore ties. Alex was rather subdued, like any artist looking for work. He just put it up there for approval. Knowing what I know now, I realized he was quite confident that unless these idiots didn't know what they were looking at, they were going to hire him. One of them was Chase Craig, who, as time went on, was one of the most disliked men in the business. Huh. Interesting. One of the most disliked men in the business. He was the reason Toth left Western Publishing. Huh. Chase got his position by simply outliving everybody else. He didn't get it by talent. Interesting. People have a lot of access to grind. This might be the case. It might be true, but then again, sometimes you find out other things about certain people who have access to grind. But let's see. Everybody that had the job either quit or left. Chuck McKimson was an art director for a while along with Chase. Chase would come in and oversee everything simply because nobody told him not to. Tallender, I can't remember his first name, was the head of the company. He was involved in the last blow-up with Alex, who usually dealt with Chase. Alex and I also worked for Don McLaughlin, an art director who put together a bunch of little sports booklets with illustrations. He didn't do any comics. Alex couldn't do them all, so I did some. I guess this was Sparky Moore's work on Snow White. You know, he's clearly a legitimate cartoonist. And these are Toth's doodles, which were collected in a book, by the way, that I have. I forgot the title, but it's a book of Toth doodles. That's what he did for many years near the end of his life. Alex couldn't do them all, so I did some. That was the time he blew up at Don McLaughlin, which was not a smart thing to do because Don didn't suffer fools gladly, and if you jumped in Don's face, he'd jump right back at you. That's the way some people are, no doubt about it. I'm like that myself. I just took enough shit growing up in my life that I was basically, it taught me never to take shit from anyone ever again. Look at this. Look at Toth's placement of blacks. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay. Amash asks, did Alex go in the offices very often? Moore says, well, he would go in as often as the rest of us in the beginning. We'd do a whole book in pencil, get it approved, then go home and ink. I don't know if someone lettered Alex's work before he inked it or whether Alex did it his own lettering. Near the end, in his older days, he was doing his own lettering, and it was like the best lettering. It really was. Alex did his own. Okay. His pencils were very complete. He was a very fast artist, kind of a workaholic once he started a job. I remember one time he commented he'd been at the board for 22 straight hours. Whoa. Wow. I've done 18 hours. I know that. 4 months, though. It was 18-hour days. You know. I don't recommend it. But it had to get done. I remember one time he commented that he'd been at the board for 22 straight hours. Wow. That's the thing, though, when you get these deadlines or, you know, you got to get it done. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to get it done, and you find a way. You find a way. And hopefully you can sleep on it before you let it go, because if you don't sleep on it, you might, you know, send something out there that you're a little too tired to judge if it's good or not. So hopefully you can sleep on it, wake up, fresh eyes, and say, oh, okay, maybe I could do this or that. Or sometimes it's good to go. The other thing is, the other thing he would do is nearly complete a page with maybe 1 or 2 panels left to do, and there'd be something about the page he didn't like, so he'd just rip it up. Mentioned that a few times. Editors used to do it to him. Then he started to do it to himself a few years later. It's very unfortunate, very unfortunate. I'd say, what the hell did you do that for? Somebody'd like to have that or buy it. Nah, it's crap. I don't want anybody to know it. Wow. I get his attitude about it, but man, I would love to have those. I didn't get well acquainted with him until we worked at Hanna-Barbera. I got to work with him in the room sometimes and saw him quite often. One day we went to lunch and went to a movie, and he was muttering about being single. He hadn't married Gila yet. At one point, he was bringing a gun to work, which got everybody nervous. We asked him why he did that, but he didn't tell us why. Chuckles. He was pretty morose. Sometimes he would be very quiet about the way he was feeling until he exploded. And then you didn't have to worry. He'd tell you everything. Mutual chuckling. Amar says, did you spend much time with Alex? Moore says, I did as time went on, to the point of his bringing his family out to where I lived because I had saddle horses. Alex married a receptionist at Whitman named Christine, a very attractive little lady, and they had 4 children. But the marriage didn't last, and it was his last wife, Gala, who kept him from imploding altogether. I knew Chris only to speak to, but I knew Gala pretty well because she was Bill Hanna's private secretary. Alex's children were teenagers when they came out to my place. Gala had evidently been raised around the livestock, and she could ride a horse. She had a wonderful time, and Alex seemed to really enjoy himself, though he didn't ride the horses. Amash says, let me back up to the Whitman days. Generally, did he get along with his editors? Moore said, I wasn't present in the room when he showed his stuff because they gave you the courtesy of privacy. So if they had something uncomplimentary to say, it wasn't broadcast. Amash said, would they have him make many changes? Moore says, not after the first time. Not after the first time. It's hilarious. Mutual laughter. A knowing laugh about Toth. Of course, Chase must have. Chase did 11 things wrong. The reason I know he did 11 things wrong is that when the final blow-up came, Toth marched down the hall with a sheet of paper in his hand, stopped at Chase Craig's office and said, I'm going into Talender's office and read this list, and it all concerns you. If you want to hear what it is, then come along. So Chase did. They went to Talender's room, and Chase sat down, and Alex proceeded to tell Talender in his own style that he was unhappy with Chase and thought he was an incompetent. He said he had 11 things that, in particular, he wanted to say. He read them all off and then more or less told them to go screw themselves and walked out. That was the end of his career with Western. Wow. Man. Let's see. So, end of his career with Western. The next time I saw him, Johnny Quest had started at Hanna-Barbera, and Hanna-Barbera was looking for artists who drew the whole human figure, not just the little round-bottomed characters. An artist named Mel Kiefer called me and said to come on in. He said they needed my kind of art, so I went in and discovered that Toth had shown up. They didn't put him with the rest of us. They stuck him in a room by himself. Amash says, was that preventive medicine? Laughs. Moore said, yeah, there you go. They chuckle. That's hilarious. That is very funny. It kept the explosion where it wouldn't hurt anybody when it went off. Joe Barbera called Alex the Invisible Man because some days you'd see him, some days you wouldn't. For instance, he would drive in, and if his usual parking space was occupied, he'd turn around and go home. He wouldn't come in and say, hey, there's somebody in my parking space. They'd call and ask why I wasn't in, and he'd tell them, somebody took my parking space. That's hilarious. Once he married Gila, he didn't come in at all. She just took him home to work She just took him home to work, and as she told me, I tell Alex just enough so that he knows what to do. But I don't tell him anything about the office politics or anything like that. She was a smart lady, and he really loved her. In his later years, if you met him within the first half hour of the conversation, he would inform you of how many days, months, and hours it had been since Gyla died. Wow. Yeah, he got to the point where he didn't leave his house. He had that 4-holer Buick that sat in his garage, and all 4 tires went flat because he never used it, and he never walked to the grocery store. Well, I wonder what he did. He must have had some kind of helper or friends. Amar says, do you remember what the blow-up he had with McLaughlin was over? Moore says, no, I don't. By the way, these are his character sheets for the Super Friends. Look at that. Look at that leg, you know. No bulging muscles for no reason. Just Flash is lean. Batman's solid musculature. Green Lantern is great looking. It's awesome. No, I don't. McLaughlin would look at your work and most of the time say, fine. But sometimes he'd say, this isn't fitting with what we're expecting. Or do this, do that. Whatever it was, apologize, yawning, a little tired. Whatever it was, Toth blew up at him, which was a mistake because McLaughlin went right back at him. His one statement was, I'm sick of looking at your goddamn simplified drawings where your hands look like a bunch of bananas. It's funny, the choice of words, bananas, because, what was his name? An old teacher I had at School of Visual Arts. I mentioned him in one of the last videos, or last 2 videos. Not Howard Porter, something. Anyway, he said that Toth drew fingers like carrots. And here this guy says bananas. Toth said to me later, kind of like a chastised little boy weekly, you think my hands look like bananas? I said, well, Alex, you do have everything slimmed to a simplified form, and bananas look like fingers if you look at them right. That's interesting. John Romita Jr. does certain things with his hands sometimes that looks like it's, I don't know, looks like it's a little weird looking, actually, like banana style. Pretty funny. He took it well. The fact that he had done something that he approved of that somebody else didn't, someone whom he more or less respected, made him respect McLaughlin. Because McLaughlin was a good art director and a competent artist in his own right. If he asked you for a change, there was generally a good reason. Whereas Chase wouldn't know decent art if you gave him a lecture on it. Nobody had respected him at all. So when Alex lit into him, Chuckles, everybody applauded silently. Yeah, that's the way it goes. So, Amash says, Alex told me one of the reasons he quit was because he had asked for a raise. And when they'd give a raise, it was like $1 a page or something like that. The last raise they gave Alex was 50 cents a page, and that's what made him blow up. Man, Moore says, well, I could understand that. If they offered him 50 cents, yeah, that would be an insult. So yeah, if that's what the final blow was, that would be typical of Alex. Amash says, did you socialize much with Alex while at Hanna-Barbera? And he goes, not all that much. I mean, we'd go to lunch together sometimes. And one afternoon we went to see Deep Throat. They laugh. As good as Alex was, I never heard him really knock anybody else's work. He'd go around and look at a piece of work, and it might not be much. He'd say, okay. Or he'd say, well, that's kind of nice, isn't it? Because he was so good, he did not rap other people. And I always admired him for that. You've got to admire a guy that tells you the truth all the time, even if it's something you don't want to hear. Now, isn't that something? That's why I underlined it years ago when I got this. You've got to admire a guy that tells you the truth all the time, even if it's something you don't want to hear. Well, that's what free speech is, right? In the end, telling people what they don't want to hear. If you don't have that right, then you don't have anything. Look at this. Sierra Smith, early Toth. A nice little cartoon by Toth in an envelope of a letter he sent to. That's a young Toth, but look at that. It's fantastic. Look at the composition. Look at the placement of blacks and whites. Beautiful. Okay. So there was one incident when Alex caught Iowa Takamoto. I guess Iowa? I don't know. Anyway, Iowa Takamoto. That's all I can make from that. Whiting out Toth's signature on the model sheets. Oof. Oh, man, you don't do that. I had a woman the other day. She has like 1 million followers, 2 million followers on X. And she shared one of my cartoons with Kamala with the joy under her lip, like a Hitler mustache that I drew. She shared it, right? And got a lot of views, and my name was removed. Pissed me off. Happens too often. Doesn't happen with my Muhammad cartoons, but it happens with my other cartoons, and I hate that. I hate when people do that. It happens too much. So let's see how Toth handled this. Oof. He was caught whiting out Toth's signature on the model sheets. Oh, that did not go well. Laughs. That was throwing the match in the gasoline. But by that time, a lot of things were bothering him. For instance, I didn't know, and I discovered accidentally years later, that he was a great believer of Rush Limbaugh. Okay, I think this is where it's not a mosh here. I guess it's this guy, because he was a listener. He was a conservative, Toth. He was. And I know that some people don't like that about Toth. And this guy, Amash, seemed like he was trying to get him away from being that, which is what all leftists do, right? They always want you to be a leftist. So they want to smear your, heroes and people that you admire, and get them out of the way, and then bring you to their fold. It's an ugly thing, but it's what collectivists always do. They want you to be them. They need to validate themselves with everyone that they meet. If someone that they speak to isn't on their side, they have to try to convert them. It's disgusting, but it's like a religion in that way. It really is. Leftism, communism, socialism, Nazism, all these isms, and Nazism, National Socialism. That's what it is. And leftists will never call it that, because the word socialism, they're like stuck on it. Like, God damn it, he was a socialist. And then they say, well, it was right-wing socialism, and I laugh. Anyway, let me go on here, because Rush Limbaugh, okay, he says he was a great believer. I don't know what that means exactly. It sounds like this guy was not interested, so he calls it a great believer in Rush Limbaugh. He was a listener to Rush Limbaugh. Whatever, great believer? It sounds like it's God? No. One day, Alex told me he was convinced that Chinese and Russians were secretly uniting with the idea of taking us over. And all this and that. Now, that's not far-fetched. Of course, they would like to do that. They would. I mean, they have tried to, corrupt, even recently, right? You find out about Lauren Chen getting $10 million and trying to get other right-wingers to push the Russian bullshit. I mean, and this idea, right, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little away from this, but when I hear this, it's like, just reminds me, this is not a conspiracy. If they could take us out, they would. And this guy's calling it a conspiracy. One day, Russians, right? It's rather surprised me that a man who was so intelligent and would get so immersed in these wild schemes, which I suppose is not unusual. You use your intelligence for whatever you want. Wild schemes. We have enemies looking to cut our throat. From the Islamic enemy to the communist enemy. That's a fact. And this idiot is trying to pretend that's some kind of conspiracy theory. And then the other idiot says, Amash says, Alex was a big believer in conspiracy theories. This guy says he was a believer in Rush Limbaugh. This guy says he was a believer in conspiracy theories. No. You either, know certain things, you adhere to certain ideas. Believer means like a religious connotation. The word believe, it's for communists. Again, it's for National Socialists. It's for socialist fascists. It's for religionists. It's for Muslims. It's this idea where he's trying to, I don't know, I get this. They're trying to put down Toth politically. So yeah, he's a great artist, but man, he was a conspiracy theorist. Bullshit. Moore, oh yeah, I've often wondered if perhaps this trickled down into his private life, that perhaps he felt anybody he wasn't fully in favor with would be conspiring against him in some way. Now that right there is telling on himself, because it sounds like this guy's on the left, and Amash sure is. And it's just this idea where, again, they cannot live with the fact that not everyone's like them. It's a sick, twisted, collectivist poison. That's what they can't abide by others not thinking what they do. It's disgusting. And Toth clearly did not think what they do, and it's a problem for them. Not for Toth, for them. It's their problem. And they're trying to say, yeah, he had a problem that he's a great artist, but man, what? He wasn't you? Good for him. And good for us. Because I'll tell you one thing, if he was a stinking leftist, he wouldn't be as good as he was. That's a fact. Anyway. And then, yeah, conspiring. He wasn't fully in favor of Boof. And Amash says, okay, sometimes even when he was in favor of them, okay, he wasn't fully in favor of would-be conspiring against them. That perhaps he felt, okay, Moore says, oh yeah, I've often wondered if perhaps this trickled down to his private life, that perhaps he felt anybody he wasn't fully in favor of would be conspiring against him in some way. And then Amash says, sometimes even when he was in favor of them, laughs, and he would end friendships over the smallest slight. Well, from what I gather, I think Amash is interviewed as well in here at a certain point. And it could be this magazine where he basically tries to suggest that he was trying to move Toth away from Rush Limbaugh. It's like, fuck you. If I'm your friend, I'm not going to try to move you away from... If I think that the influence is bad, you know, there was only one Rush Limbaugh, right? There was no counterpart to Rush Limbaugh on the left. Why? Because Rush Limbaugh, for the most part, was an honest guy, telling things as he saw them. And you got all the other leftist hosts that tried to, the Rush killer, they called him, they lie their asses off. That's all they did. You know, whatever else someone wants to say about Trump, about Rush, he wasn't a liar. He could have been mistaken on certain things at times. You know, he had some problems, and, you know, he had the back problems, took the drugs, whatever. But the point is that he was always trying to get the truth out. And his enemies couldn't match him at all. Politically, I mean, in the radio business. They were looking to take him out for decades, and they never could. And there was no counterpart to him on the other side. None. Why is that? Why? And this is the truth. The reason why there has been no leftist Rush Limbaugh in radio is because radio, unlike TV, unlike other mediums, it's one man's voice, one woman's voice, right? And it goes directly to you. There's nothing to distract you. So the more honest you are, the more successful you can be, and the better broadcast you are, and so on. But if you're a stinking liar, as the leftists are, they have to lie, they're fundamentally dishonest, it smells, and everyone smells it, even people who don't really pay too much attention. They know something shitty about this person. That's why. It cuts to the truth a lot easier that way. There's nothing to distract you, no TV, no music, no sounds, no beautiful women. It's just a voice on the radio that goes directly into your mind. And I can't stand these guys trying to basically, I think Amash in particular, at some point, you'll see. So think about this. Amash was friends with him, right? For years. Toth tolerated him, right? Yes or no? If he was friends with him for years and he was on the other side politically, he tolerated him. He accepted him. We don't have Toth's account of whether he didn't like his politics, but we sure as hell get from these little potshots here that Amash didn't like his politics. And again, I think he mentioned it later. You know, look, I'm not going to just read these through and just, that's that. I got to make my commentary. And if you don't like it, to be blunt, too bad. Go to some other channel and check them out and, listen to this cold readings of these things. Because this, to me, is it's important stuff getting to this. And so, yeah, Amash is interviewed here about Toth, about his boisterous friendship. Yeah. You know what that's alluding to, his boisterous friendship. I'm curious, either it was in this one, it probably wasn't this one, where he tried to help Toth by getting away from Rush Limbaugh and away from himself. Oof. Anyway, let me go on. Okay, so he would end friendships over the smallest slight. And again, these are his Super Friends storyboards. Huh. And it's pretty funny. Look at that. A baby hopping up and down. Burping. Okay. Moore says, oh, yes, he was very aware of that sort of thing. He lived within himself so much, you know. It struck me that he would arrive at what he believed in, a plan or an idea or whatever. And so anything that didn't conform to that was either an enemy or at least not a friend. Amaj says, Gila made him happy and turned his life around. Would you say he became more open, more friendly when he married her? Moore said, yes, he did. And she told me her secret. She told me her secret was she told him just enough so that things didn't bother him. He didn't hear things that would set him off. And if this made him happy, then you could see why he'd want her around and want to be with her. Because while he's with her, everything is fine. I don't know, by omission, I guess, not hearing certain things, whether they would upset him, meaning things that were true, but I don't know. I don't know exactly the context there, but, you know, it's, to be ignorant of certain things, I guess. I wouldn't want to do that. I just wouldn't. I would like to know what's going on. I'm not exactly sure what it means there because, again, if you're honest, you want to know what's going on. You don't want to be treated like a child who can't handle things. Amar says, she didn't suffer fools very gladly either, did she? Moore says, oh no, he chuckles. It always amazed me that she married him because it's like you're stepping into the ring with an 800-pound gorilla, and are you able to control him? Control him. I don't like that. I don't like that. I resent it. I do. These are his friends, by the way, right? 800-pound gorilla who, and are you able to control him? He was as callous as it sounds. Yeah, sure as hell does sound callous. You would have to control him in order to live with him. Control him. A grown man. You couldn't have him exploding 2 or 3 nights a week for any little thing that he didn't like, you know? And so she had to be a very clever lady, and she was. I don't like this. It sounds so conspiratorial, right? She had to be very clever in how she handled this grown man. Please. She loved him. He loved her. That's it. And clearly he must have, gotten angry. That's how he was. That's how he expressed himself. And then he was very sweet to her, probably. And so on. Anyway. Amash says, so why in the world was Takamoto whiting out Alex's signature? Yeah, why? Moore, he was hired by Hanna-Barbera and perhaps felt he was becoming a little king in his own right. A king where they already had a king. A king where they already had a king and we didn't need another one. Incidentally, I was still working and we're the same age, 81. Anybody that brought a piece of work to him, he would sit there and add his own little lines to it so that when you looked at a dozen model sheets all done by different people, they'd all have the same touch. Somebody at a later time could look at these and think that the same guy did them all. A lot of the artists really resented it. That is nasty. A little rat. Amash says, I know Alex did. Then Moore says, oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, he told him, chuckles, don't you dare do any adding to my drawing. So taking his signature off was enough to make Alex just blow up. Yeah. Amash says, was Alex good on deadlines? Moore said, yes, he was. That was not one of his problems. Okay, let's see what his problems were. The shows would run like 13 weeks, so there would be 13 separate stories a season, which meant they would need 13 separate villains and sub-characters. They gave him a list of approved stories, and he'd sit there and draw villains, which is really quite a fun job. On the days he would come in, Iowa would give me the list and check off the villains check off the villains Alex had done. And then I would draw villains. And when Alex came back, 2 or 3 of them were done. They'd give him the list back, and he'd go on from there. I never had any conflict with him. Never had him come in and say, hey, I don't like your villains, and here's how I think it should be done. I admired his intelligence and the fact he was not a blowhard. If you didn't know what he could do, you wouldn't know it by his conversation. Because he was not a show-off. He'd just do the work, and you'd look and say, oh my God, that's beautiful. But you wouldn't hear it from him. You could talk to him about anything, and he would talk intelligently about it and be quite knowledgeable. Amash says, what did he like about you? Moore says, well, I don't know. I like that. It's honest. I get along with most people simply because I disagree. I get along with most people simply because if I disagree with you, it doesn't bother me even a little bit, even if your ideas are totally radical from mine. I don't have to live your life. If it's what you want to think, go right ahead. As long as you don't literally kick me in the shins, I'm not going to get upset. That's a good way of putting it, especially today. I don't give advice, and usually nobody wants to hear it, and most of the time they don't take it anyway. So that way you don't build any resentment. Amash says, were you friends with him up until he passed away? Moore says, I quit working for Disney in 1988, and he was still living in the little house behind the Hollywood Bowl. Do you remember the little window in the door? Well, I was warned that if you go up to the door and knock, he'd look out the window, and he might say, hello, come in, and he might say, get the hell out of here. Oh, that's hilarious. Let me relay another story. Ditko was very friendly with me. I used to correspond with him, right, after I did Table for One propaganda for a number of years. And there was an opportunity where a friend of mine knew his address and wanted to visit him short notice when I was in New York. And he was able to call him, and he told him that he was with me, and he wouldn't take visitors, period. That's that. That's just the way it is, I guess, right? Especially with old-timers. They're like, they don't have the luxury of, they don't care necessarily to be nice if they don't have to, I guess, right? Some people are like that their whole lives. If I don't want to see somebody, I just say it, but it's pretty funny. Get the hell out of here. So I went up to see him, and he invited me in and was very gracious. But I noticed that he was living like a hermit. In the living room, all around the walls were various packages that fit the books he ordered. Well, they were all sitting, still intact. Some of them had books out and obviously had been looked through and then stacked up. But it all looked like they were packed up, like he was going to get rid of them or move or something. I have a house on Catalina Island in Avalon, a block from the beach, and invited him to visit. He said, my car doesn't run anymore, and this and that. I said, why don't you get the hell out of there? Why don't you get the hell out of there? Go on over to my house in Catalina, and you can stay there as long as you want. You don't need a car. You can walk to the grocery store. It's just a couple blocks away. He toyed with the idea for a while, but he finally said, no, I can't leave. Why people think they're in jail when they're like that, I don't know. Some people they get settled in, especially when they're older. They just do. Amash says, well, I think part of the reason is that he felt he was leaving Gila if he left that house. It did cross my mind, actually, when I just heard that, because he loved her to death. That's the word. That's what everyone says. That was the love of his life, and she knew how to, quote-unquote, as he put it, control him, which I resent, I gotta say. I can't stand that, especially for grown people. No, she understood how he is, and, okay, maybe if I do this or that, maybe we can have a little more peace around here. And that's fine. Just put it that way. Don't talk about controlling. It's such a disrespectful way to talk about human beings, about individuals. It's such a collectivist way. You goddamn socialists. Anyway. Moore said, now that you mention it, it very well could be. That's the last place he saw her, and he could not leave. Amash says, he told me more than once that he was sitting around waiting to join her. Oof. Yeah. Moore said, yeah, and frankly, I was always mildly surprised that he didn't commit suicide. What the hell? What the hell is this? Amar said, did you keep in touch? What a thing, right? He says that and then just, next question. Did you keep in touch with him by phone after that? We corresponded. He was a great correspondent. But my last instructions on talking to him by phone were that I call, let it ring once and hang up, and then redial, and he may or may not pick the phone up. Well, he never picked the phone up when I called, so... Amar says, any other Alex stories that come to mind that you want to tell? Moore chuckles. Every year, Joe Barbera went east to the CBS executives with new shows they hoped to sell. He took sample splash posters and things like that. He was getting ready to go on one of those jaunts and needed some of the artwork touched up. He asked Alex and me to stay and work until we got these things done because he was leaving that day. We worked until around 11 o'clock that night. Joe came down to egg us on. Yeah, you're doing fine, chuckles. Alex was sitting there muttering by this time, and Joe would bring us pizza or coffee or anything we wanted. At one point he said, well, come on, Alex. You've almost got it done. Is there anything I can do? I can get you? Alex turned and said, yeah, you can get us a couple of blondes. And Joe says, why, certainly I can. That's no trouble at all. I'll have them here in a half an hour. Mutual laughter. And Joe was serious, but Alex wasn't. So Alex says, oh, Christ, no, and turned back to his board. Mutual laughter. I thought, here you're going to get yourself screwed up, going to ruin my marriage because Joe's perfectly serious. I didn't doubt for a minute that Joe could have them there in a half an hour. Amar says, did Alex talk a lot or keep quiet when he worked? Moore, no, he would chat. With me, he would. I don't know if he did with anybody else. He was in an office for a short while with Tony Segura. But that was the last time he shared an office. The time I shared an office with him was just for the one project that we had to get done, because we had to pass back and forth. We had to pass back and forth drawings, or scraps, or one thing or another. We would talk politics and other subjects. Problems arose when he had to work with somebody. If the quality was bad, that bothered him. Once, 2 representatives of some Italian comics company came over, wanting him to work for them. They talked to him, and he agreed to do it. Alex gets the first script and sits there and looks at it for a while, and picks up his pencil and writes on it, this thing is a bunch of crap. Puts it in an envelope and mails it back. That was the end of the love affair with the Italian comic book company. Except for that, he was very pleasant. If they sent the script and said, make any changes you think are necessary, it might have worked. But to just say, here, do this, and he felt it was a bunch of crap, no, he wouldn't do it. He had the good luck that most of us do not have, in that I don't care how bombastic he was so good that he could go anywhere and get a job, especially if he had somebody like Gala who said, now keep your damn mouth shut until we get the paycheck. Did she tell him that? And let's just say, again, I never heard that, and I've read a lot of these things. I never heard that from Gala. I heard she was a sweetheart. I don't think she told him that. Keep your damn mouth shut until we get the paycheck. Oof. He could always work, whereas with most of us, it was not that easy. As far as I'm concerned, he was a true genius in his field, unlike Doug Wildey, who thought he was and wasn't. I knew that Wildey didn't know much when he was looking at a piece of Toth's work one day and said, well, look at that. Look at this thing. There's practically nothing to it. Why does anybody think this is any good? What the hell? Doug Wildey? He was really good, Doug Wildey, but I forgot this. There's practically nothing to it. Why does anybody think this is any good? I said, Doug, are you telling me you can't see the simplicity of what he's done and how well it comes across? No, he says, there's no shading. Oof. And I said, there's no educating a fool. Mutual chuckling. The justice of it all is that Doug Wildey wound up running a little art shop in Las Vegas, and Toth is world famous. I mean, that's a thing, right? Maybe those of you listening, do you know anything about Doug Wildey? Just out of curiosity. If you don't, well, you know, I guess according to these guys, there's a reason why. So Amash says, but they got along okay, right? More coolly so. Toth's comment on Doug Wildey was that Doug's just as good as a scrap he happens to have at the time. Oh, man. Doug's just as good as the scrap he happens to have at the time, which was absolutely true. Doug Wildey never drew an original thing that I saw. Whoa. It's pretty harsh. I've seen some stuff of his. It looks very good, but I don't know that he ripped it off of others. I don't know that. Amash says, I would imagine Alex was one of the better paid people out there, wasn't he? Moore said, yes, I would imagine he was, because I know if they really wanted to keep you around, they did. They saw that you got an extra $50 or $100 a week. Do you have any idea of what Alex and Barbara used to fight about? Because he told me they used to fight a lot. Moore says, oh, probably no on concepts of what they should put out. A lot of the stuff that he got upset about involved story content. The stories were either dumb or weren't imaginative. He wanted to see the same kind of imagination that he was putting into the art. Amash says, Alex was hired and fired a million times by Joe Barbera. Moore says, oh yeah, he wouldn't say, I ain't coming back or anything like that. He'd just walk out. Well, anybody else, you assume that's the end of it, you know. But with Alex, they'd call him up as if nothing had happened after a few days, mutual laughter. They'd just go on with the conversation as if there's been no blow-up, or just because it was a blow-up didn't mean you quit. Once Joe asked Iowa, who was in charge of production, and given a hard time by Alex about something, Iowa, do we really need this guy? And Iowa said, yeah, Joe, he's worth the effort. We really need him. So Joe put up with it. Yeah. Alex was a genius at what he did, and I felt sorry that whatever fates there may be, or gods would not let him enjoy it. Okay, let me reread that. Alex was a genius at what he did, and I felt sorry that whatever fates there may be, or gods would not let him enjoy it. And through no fault of his own, why? Well, yeah, it was all his fault, but there's no way he could control it. What the hell is he talking about? If something needed to be said, he said it, even if he was going to hang for it. He was a very honest man. I admired him. Alex could have been even more famous than he was, but he would not allow himself, in those dark nights he spent staring into the void, to be happy. I'm glad I met him and knew him. And like I said, I liked him and got along fine with him. Finish. Next time we'll read Amash, and I'll brace myself a little again, because some stuff I remember. You know, I think he's a leftist, and he didn't like that Toth listened to Rush Limbaugh. And it was a problem for him, not for Toth. And so I'm going to brace myself for that. But anyway, thanks again for listening, everyone. I do appreciate your time. Thanks for indulging my interjections. I get these thoughts. I just want to express them. And if you could subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate it. If you like this video, if you could like it, I appreciate it. Hit the like button and spread the word. So again, this is Alex Toth, number 13. Until next time. Thanks, everyone.